Hi, I'm Shain, a New York Jewish mom, young in spirit, but with decades, so many decades of experience.
And I'm Sarah, her daughter, and a practicing therapist. And this is Listen to My Mother,
A podcast where we answer your real-life questions with 2 points of view, one rooted in motherly instinct and
one rooted in clinical training.
You'll get guidance, support, maybe a little tough love, but always from the heart.
And if you'd like us to answer your question on air, head to the link in our show notes and send it our way. We want to hear any questions you have.
And now it's time to
Listen to My Mother.
How are the dogs today?
They're doing a lot better. Well, Reese was fine all along. He never had a reaction to the vaccines, but Archie was being a little weirdo. And I think I told you about how the day of the vaccines, he was outside and wouldn't move to come inside, and I had to go get him because I had to leave. And when I picked him up, I touched the tender part of his leg where the shot was, and he tried to bite me. So I flipped him onto his back and was holding him like a baby, and then he started peeing all over his belly and all over my chest. So I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'm not going to work today. So I canceled my session and I stayed home with him just to kind of make sure he was okay. He wouldn't let me touch him. He wouldn't walk. The next morning, he was limping and wouldn't use that leg and wouldn't walk. And so I carried him to put him outside to pee. And instead of doing anything, he curled up in a pile of trash.
I just think it's important for people to know that you abandoned your dogs for 4 days, and then by coming to visit your parents, and when you returned, the very next day you took them to the vet for shots. Why would the dog not be traumatized and pee all over you? You deserved it. Not really. Maybe you didn't deserve it, but you got it anyway.
I got it anyway. Well, we recorded the last episode when I was with you, which was just a couple days ago. And then I came home the next morning. They had to get all of their shots. They had 2 in the butt, 1 in the arm, and then an oral injection. They had a lot going on.
Why would you schedule this on the day after you return after being away for a few days?
I didn't really think about it, but I will never do that again.
And that's the live and learn part of our journey.
Yeah.
That's how I felt about scheduling to come here the day after my birthday. I'm never scheduling travel the day after my birthday.
And that's how I felt. We arrived here in Florida from Phoenix when we were being with our kids in Phoenix. And what the hell was I thinking?
Knew that was crazy.
We traveled
on
New Year's Day. I have a business I'm running. I had to close out the year. First, close out the month, close out the year, start the new year, all of that while I was traveling. It was insane. I will never do that again. Mm-hmm. So we've all learned something.
And for the listener, the new voice this week is my sister. We've been really lucky. Every episode we've had a guest. That will probably not be the case moving forward. But that's my sister, Mara, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Mara. I'm Sarah's sister.
There you go.
And should we add the most interesting, well, there's a lot of interesting things about the two of you, but that you are from 2 different generations, yes. Mm-hmm. Same marriage, same husband, but 20 years apart.
And guess who's older?
and guess who's older, right?
Well, we did mention this in the first episode when we first introduced the Kanye topic and Jay and this issue, and then we mentioned that my siblings were a lot older.
I want to impress on everyone that this is an anomaly because Mara mentioned yesterday was her birthday, and it was her 52nd birthday, which is impossible because I'm only 52. I just want to make that clear that actually it will be my 78th birthday. And I was 26 when I gave birth to Mara. I was 28 when I gave birth to your brother. And I was 46 when I gave birth to you, Sarah.
Yes.
So there we go.
When I was little, I was convinced that there was another baby, that I had a baby brother that you kept from me who lived in a closet.
Oh, God.
That is, if you've just told a family secret, really. I mean, keep those things to yourself.
What was his name?
He didn't have a name, but he wore a yellow onesie.
Very, very specific.
This baby brother that wore the yellow onesie lived in your closet in the master bedroom in the Fort Lee apartment.
Oh, is that where we left him?
Yeah.
Trying to remember the closet. I'm merging Queens. I know where your bedroom was, but I can't picture the closet there. I'm merging Queens and Fort Lee.
There wasn't a great closet. There was a closet? I don't even remember.
The closet in Fort Lee was where your kimonos lived, and where the ladder lived that I would climb up to the top of and then like jump onto the bed from. Let's move on to revisit the Kanye thing, which by the time this airs will be like 4 months late to
Right.
like current events. But actually no, because this isn't really specifically about the Super Bowl ad. This is more just about, we had a disagreement, and actually let's loop Mara in because I don't know that she knows about our disagreement, because
I know a bit, but you can.
It wasn't a disagreement so much as a different point of view in which we disagreed.
yeah, how would you define?
Sarah thought that the kids were more informed than you thought they were. So that's
Yes.
basically.
I was basically speaking about Jewish children being formed or knowing about the anti-Semitism that exists today, really all over the country and all over the world, but let's focus on America.
Well, we were specifically talking about Kanye and Kanye's anti-Semitism.
Yes, but it's a broader issue. It
No,
came up about. You want to keep it at Kanye?
Well, that was the conversation, and that was what the poll was about. The poll was not about anti-Semitism in America.
Okay.
It was about Kanye's anti-Semitism.
Okay,
So
let's
did you
keep it
ever
that specific.
Get results to that poll?
Yeah, so we only got 6 results, so I just want to kind of preface this with, like, this is not an extensive study.
You grew up with Kanye's music, so that your generation, who basically, that you and people even older than you would know Kanye's music, be aware of it. Their children would probably be aware of it, and they would be aware of the anti-Semitism, and they would, thereby their children would also be aware. And my position was that I believe Jewish parents in America protect their children and do not give them this information, and that my grandson, your nephew, Mara's son, who we referred to as Jay, is aware of this and was bothered by an incident that took place in his school, and it upset him because he does know about the extent of Kanye West's anti-Semitism, but that other children, Christian, non-Jewish children, would certainly not know because it would have no impact on their parents or on the kids. But my take is that Jewish parents would know, but their children would not, because they would protect their children from that information, which I personally think is wrong, or not the smartest thing to do. Your children need to know where they live and what's going on around them, but that's another discussion. And you feel that they absolutely would know about Kanye's anti-Semitism. So as the parent of this child that started all of this, do you fall on any side or something in the middle? Or Mara, do you have...
Well, the parents that I know, well, obviously I am a Jewish parent and my son knows, but my son is very, very into current events and he is aware of what's going on in the news, and so we try to shield him from some, but not all. He's aware of what's going on around him sometimes.
Okay, so you are of the protective Jewish parent, not necessarily giving this
Well,
information.
no, he has this information.
Right.
We did. We talked to him about this. No, 100%. I mean, I protect him from some stuff. Obviously, he's still only 11 years old. I'm not completely... But no, he knows about Kanye West. He knows about the anti-Semitism, and he knew about it before. And that's not just from reading the news. That's from us discussing it with him. As for other kids, I don't know if any of the other children in his classroom are aware of it. I don't really know their
How many of them are
parents.
Jewish?
None of them. He's the
Because
only Jewish
we're
child.
talking about specifically Jewish families. My thing was that these kids in his class who were playing this game and using
not,
Kanye's name would not even know about it because it wouldn't affect them. Had they known about it, they might not have played that game.
So Sarah, your poll was to only Jewish parents with Jewish children?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know. Actually, I think I remember now that you asked me about talking about it with the kids in the Hebrew school, and I completely forgot to do that. So I never discussed it with any of those parents.
And you're only 52.
So I just want to reiterate that only 6 people respond to this. This is not an expansive study that we don't have.
Therefore, not statistically viable,
Exactly.
Whatever.
Yeah. So first, before I go through the results, what percentage would you think I'm right versus you're right?
Oh, I'm always right. So I don't see that as even an issue. But I'm just wondering if the parents themselves are going to say, Kanye who? Or he did something anti-Semitic? I didn't know that. I think there's going to be out of your 6, maybe half are going to say, I had no idea Kanye West was anti-Semitic.
Right.
I think the parents are just as out of information as the kids would be. And if the parents are, the kids are. So.
I mean, it really, I don't know. It depends on...
So what, you want to tell us, Sarah? Or are you going to keep it a secret?
So, we were both very wrong.
Both of us.
Yeah, in a lot of different ways. So, the first point was that I felt that most parents of middle school age kids right now would be millennial parents. So, people who grew up with Kanye, which according to our 6 people is wrong. Only 16.7% are millennials, so 1, and 83.3% are Gen X.
And to me, those labels mean absolutely nothing. How old does that mean?
I'm
the
Gen X.
Parent? You're Gen X.
Yeah, so they're all
okay.
And I'm a millennial.
Okay.
Yeah. So the majority did not grow up with Kanye the way that millennials did. The age range of the kids was 11 to 13 of the people who responded. And they had a 100% awareness of who Kanye is and his anti-Semitism.
The parents did.
Yes.
And the children?
Also 100% awareness of who Kanye is.
Mm-hmm.
Of who he is, but...
Yes. So now we come down to the child's awareness of Kanye's anti-Semitism and the Super Bowl ad and pretty much all of that. And it was exactly 50-50. Of the kids who were aware of Kanye's anti-Semitism, I asked if you have had a conversation with your kid about this, and it was 100% yes. Of the kids who knew, the parents had a conversation with them. Of the kids who didn't know, I asked, is the reason that they don't know because you are actively shielding them from this? And the answer was 100% no. They are just not talking about it. It's not in any sort of active protection. It's just not a conversation that's happening. And a lot of people who said no did say, in the comment section on the bottom, I probably should have a conversation with my kid about this. They probably should be aware of what is happening in the world. So it's, in no way is it protection or shielding.
Right, it just hadn't crossed their radar.
Yeah. Or if it crossed their radar, it didn't cross their mind that it's a conversation that should have happened with the kids.
Right.
Okay, so they're negligent parents.
I don't know if I would go that far. Interesting.
So we're both right.
I would be curious to know, to do a poll on not just exclude it, not just make it Jewish parents, but all parents of middle schoolers how are they aware of it? Have they discussed it with their kids?
So if you broaden this to, you know, the Kanye thing to the full population, people don't care. You know, they might say, "Oh, that's a terrible thing he did," and then move on. And it's not going to, you know, it's not going to have. They're not going to have the conversation we have.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm curious, kind of like once this episode airs, if we like put out another survey to anyone with middle school age kids, and they can kind of like designate if they're Jewish or not in their responses, and we can track like the frequency with which like non-Jewish families are having these conversations versus Jewish families.
I would be very curious to see the results, because I know out of my friends, you know, I have a core group of friends and all of our kids are the same age and I'm the only Jewish one, and I know that at least one of them is definitely aware of it and their child is aware of it. I know another one who I'm not sure if the other two are even aware that it happened.
So is your friend aware because you're her friend?
No, because that's just who she is. She is just aware of what is happening.
Because most people in the United States have never met a Jew. Be aware. There's like...
I'm going to stop you real quick. Never knowingly met a Jew.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll add that. But how many Jews live in the United States? And they're mostly in urban centers. There are, not even, 16 million Jews in the world? Where
Jews make up 0.2% of the American population.
Right.
And
the American population is like 250 billion, I don't know, million people. Let's say 250 million. And maybe 16 million.
7.5 million Jews in the United States in 2020.
All right, 17.5 million.
7.5.
7.5 million Jews in the United States, where there are 250 million people. There are not a lot of people in the United States who even know a Jew or have ever had a conversation.
Kanye has more followers on Instagram than there are Jews either in America or in the world. I don't remember exactly which one.
In the world, there are only if maybe not even 20 million Jews in the world. Not even. We have not repopulated.
In 2023, there were 15.7 million people. 7 million Jews.
15.7 million? Mm-hmm. All right, hold on. Let me see how many followers Kanye has on Instagram. Okay, say again. How many Jews are there in the world?
15.7 million.
And Kanye has 20.4 million followers.
Wow.
Okay, so be aware, we have not replaced the number of Jews in the world that existed before World War II. We, as a people, we have not replaced the numbers. Let's talk about, now that we have Mara here with us, is family communication.
Here we go.
Family communication, in that Mara and her husband and her son came last night. Her dad, my husband, who you met last week, last session, had a plan today to celebrate a friend's birthday.
Howard didn't have that plan.
But no. Right. Larry did have a plan to celebrate a friend's birthday for lunch. And Larry was talking about, since we would be doing this, it would be nice if he took Mara's husband and went to the lunch together. And we talked about that. Sarah heard it because she was here at the time, about Howard would go with Larry out to lunch. So my assumption was that Larry would have spoken to Howard about this. Sarah's assumption was that Larry would have spoken to Howard about this. So at some point, Sarah just mentioned when Dad and Howard go out to lunch, without mentioning it was for somebody else's birthday, the assumption was that, well, Howard knew about the birthday. And the reaction that came from Mara, maybe Howard through Mara, I don't know, was, we don't know anything about this birthday. Howard would be happy to go out to lunch with, Larry, but doesn't want to do a social thing with people he doesn't know, and don't like being surprised and have this sprung on it. When we didn't understand it to be sprung on, we thought Larry would have had this conversation. Anyway, the point is, family communication, if all you get is half of the information, it can cause discomfort, it can cause a reactiveness, it can, that it's hard when people are not communicative in a family.
And even when they are, because we are barely, but still, getting all the details in there is important.
Well, right, when it wasn't that I had assumed that Dad would talk to Howard about it, I assumed that by the time I heard that Dad was taking Howard to this birthday lunch, that had already been established with Howard. That was a plan that they had made together.
Right, that's what you assumed.
The case.
So there was this breakdown in communication that caused a little ruffling of feathers. Don't make plans for Howard, that he doesn't know about, and surprise him, and we're coming, So in our family, and we are fairly, but there are so many times when we only get partial information. Yes. And is this...
But part of that is also perspective, because you being told that you're going out into a social situation is not something that's going to throw you. For me, that was something that, and this has happened, before, this is not the first time, where you thought that Howard already talked to Dad, I understand that, but where you thought, okay, we're going out and it's not a big deal, because for me, that's very stressful. Mm-hmm. I'm not okay with just being thrown into a social situation without either preparing or having the chance to say, no, this isn't happening. So it's also different perspectives about, where the lens you're looking through.
Yes. So this is the part where you really need to know each other. Mm-hmm. You need to know each other's limitations. Right. You need to know what, and to take that into account, as opposed, it's. I'm as guilty of it as anyone else in terms of seeing it, but it's so obvious so much of the time when there is a family member who will remain unnamed, who cannot read the room, simply cannot.
Do we have to leave it unnamed? I feel like it's not an insult, it's just a fact.
And I have...
Well, I think we may have a few of those, but okay, I know who you're talking about.
Well, it's my husband. He really cannot read the room. And finally, I've kind of been protecting him from knowing that, kind of shoring up other parts. And the other day, I actually said to him, you do understand that you cannot read the room. It's not a skill that you have. And he was dumbfounded. He really was. Not that he'll learn anything from it, but...
Well, this is one of my favorite stories about Dad, was the time when I was visiting you guys in Phoenix, and I went to go take Reese out, and I had put a bunch of knots at specific places in his leash to be able to give me different grips at different lengths. And I went to go take Reese out, and all of the knots had been undone. And I was like, who would do that? That's that's such a crazy thing for someone to do. And Dad was like, oh, I was doing you a favor. I got all knotted up. I was like, but no, I worked so hard to get those knots exactly where they were. Now I still use that leash, and it's such a pain in the ass because now there's 12 knots in it because I couldn't redo it exactly where I wanted it to be. And it was just, that is I think we've talked about this before, that if I were to pick one story about each parent that just really encompassed them, that would be my story for Dad.
And what's your story for me?
The time that we were at Rosh Hashanah services and we were standing for a prayer.
And,
and
I know this one.
an old man with a walker moved into the row in front of us, and you leaned over and you said, "Psst, pull out his chair from under him."
God. Oh my God. Yeah, that's good. That's a good one.
You do know I was kidding, right?
I know, but that's like most parents, most people would not make that joke.
Oh God, there was, I don't know if you want the joke when you made it when after Grandma Millie died, and some comment that you guys made to each other when you were cleaning out.
This is also, I tell people this story all the time. Also, when I talk about how death is dealt with in our family, was so first of all, there's two parts to the story. The first part is we were cleaning out Grandma's apartment after she died, and there was just so much, I don't want to say crap, but it was just like endless tchotchkes.
Well, be clear that it's Dad's mom.
Right. Yeah, paternal grandmother. It was a lot of tchotchkes. And you made a comment while we were cleaning out the apartment. You're like, wow, I really need to start cleaning out my house. Which, side note, have you ever heard of Swedish death cleaning?
No.
It's when you clean out your house and you only keep things that people would want after you die. Which I think is a brilliant way to clean your home.
So you do it before you die.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully you clean it not after you.
Well, no, but it's not just like in preparation for your death. It's how you live your life. Like you only keep things that people would want after you die, and I think that that's so cool. Which I can't live by that. I have so much junk just in the room I'm sitting in right now. But anyway, so we were cleaning out Grandma's apartment, and Mommy made a comment of like, "Wow, I really need to start cleaning my house so that you don't have to do all of this when I die." And I was like, "Don't worry about it. When you die, I'm just burning the house down." And then later we were at the funeral home, and we were talking about like the plans for the funeral, and my aunt, my dad's sister, was there, and her daughter, my cousin, was there, and my aunt made a comment about like, wow, like I really should start making these plans of what I want my funeral to be so that like it's just easy when it's time. And her daughter was like, oh my God, Mom, that's so morbid, like don't talk about that. And I turned to you and I said, you don't have to worry about it. When I burn the house down with all your stuff, your body will be in there.
Two of you together, you're a perfect match.
But it's like, look, I as a Holocaust family, I had no grandparents. They were murdered. I had.
Are we coming back here again?
No. Just death was. I didn't experience the death of my grandparents. I didn't have grandparents to die. So I didn't experience what it was to lose somebody close to you until my parents died. So they were, but death was always in the stories. We grew up with dead people in our home. They were already dead. I didn't have to experience their death. I lived with the dead people in my home.
I want to be clear that you do not mean literal dead bodies. You mean the ghosts of people.
Yes. The stories about them, the energy that exists, if you will, after somebody is dead. So when my mother was in the hospital and survived a surgery at the age of 91, but was in very, very, very bad shape. And we ended up being in the hospital for months on end. I was walking down the hallway in the hospital. We took a break, my brother, my sister, and I. We were just going to the cafeteria, get a quick bite, cup of coffee, something. And as we're walking, I just turned to them and said, "What happened to dying on the table?" God. That was one of the options going into this surgery. We didn't know we were going to have to go through this whole month-long thing before she died.
Months long.
Months and months.
But
black humor about death is very much part of my brother, my sister, and me, because it's how we've always lived.
There's like a kind of knowing that trauma leads to humor, and that's a very Jewish thing, is like to process trauma through humor. Mm-hmm. But I don't, like, I've always believed this to be just like a widespread thing that is true, that people who have experienced trauma are funnier. But I'm now one of the founding members of the 3G group in Colorado, which is Grandchildren of Holocaust Survivors. And I'm like working with the board members for this, and we're talking about the events that we're going to host. And like there's a lot of talks about like memorial events and storytelling events to like dig into these stories and learn how to tell our grandparents' stories. And they're all like wonderful activities. But I suggested, well, how cool would it be if we brought in like a comedian to give us a workshop on how to turn our trauma into comedy bits?
I love that idea.
Which I think would be so much fun. And they were like, I don't know, it kind of makes it like too light. But like that's such a Jewish thing to like make light of our trauma, and I feel like that would be such a cool idea. But no one else was on board. I was like, is it just us?
Did you watch
and they are survivors' grandchildren.
Yes.
But there is such an array of how survivors dealt with the stories. I grew up from birth with the stories. You were exposed to the stories practically from birth because it was just part of our family's lore. But there are many, many families that never spoke about it, vis-a-vis the book you just read that laid you out, Sarah.
Yeah.
Or even Mouse, for example. Mouse.
Oh, yeah. I just read Inkflower by Susie Zale, and I called Mom, like, sobbing after I finished it, and I said to her when I was on the phone, I was like, I have generally considered myself to be pretty numb to Holocaust stories, like, because it is so much part of our lore, and, like, from as long as I can remember, the Holocaust has been a part of my life.
Yeah.
That like I went to Auschwitz and I was like not really affected, and like I have read other Holocaust books and like don't really find them that. But then I just read this book, Inkflower, and was like ugly sobbing. And I called Mom. I was like, I just love you so much.
But that in that story, I haven't read it, but you told me that the parent never told their story until they were dying and were telling it to a 37-year-old daughter
So
who never heard it before.
In real life, because this book was based off of the author's real life. She was 37 in real life when her dad told her. In the book, the character that's based off of her was 17. But I think that was part of what ruined me so much about this book was, you remember in Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist, Mar, in the first season, when like the dad died at the end of the first season?
Yes.
That's basically what is happening in this book. And I think that's what wrecked me more than anything. Yeah. But there was no reprieve. Like, I feel like in so many Holocaust stories that do the time jumps, where it's like, we're telling the story about the Holocaust in the past, and now we're back in the present. In the present, like, it's a reprieve. Whereas in this book, the present was worse.
Oh, God. Right, okay, I get that.
And I had a really hard time finishing it, but I finished it in 2 days. So not really a hard time, but like emotionally, it was very hard finishing it. I was crying a lot, and I called Mom very upset. But
so when I got off the phone with you, because Dad always wants to know who called, what they said, what's going on. He needs to stay connected. Even if he hears one word, he wants to know the whole story. So I said, she just called to say she loves us.
The only book that I ever read about the Holocaust that slayed me like that was Alan and Naomi. Mm-hmm. Did you ever read Alan and Naomi?
I must have.
It's a young adult book.
Yeah.
And I read it when I was a kid, and I've only read it twice, once years later, and both times, like, just killed me, that book.
Well, we're starting a Holocaust related book club for the 3G group because everyone just wants to be miserable all the time.
Oh, Lord.
I'm like, I don't know. I'm going to push really hard for this comedy thing because I think like if all we're doing is really like horrible, sad things, I don't want to do it anymore. That's going to become really overwhelming. Anyway, all of that is to say, where did we start? We just went off on such a tangent.
Kanye West?
Right.
Family communication.
Oh, right. I wanted to ask, so where do we think the breakdown happened in that conversation?
Well, for me, I know exactly where it happened. I forgot who Dad is, and I assumed he talked to Howard.
That's, yes. So, how about for you?
I know who Dad is, and I guess I knew intrinsically that he would not have spoken to Howard yet. And I thought when I absolutely knew Dad didn't speak to Howard yet in my bones, because the way I presented it to you via text was when Dad and Howard go out, and I parenthesized Jeff's birthday lunch because I really felt you wouldn't have known about Jeff's birthday.
Right. So that's
lunch.
how we found out about it.
Right.
On the way to the airport, and I had forgotten, when you mentioned it, Sarah, you said the 13th. And I was like, sure, absolutely, whatever, we're there. And it didn't occur to me that it was the day after we arrived.
Right.
So I was like, if there's any way we can do it another time, you couldn't do it another time.
Right.
That's fine. But being like, Howard's first day here, he's now going out to a birthday party with people he doesn't like.
Right.
What?
Right. So it's not that I forgot who Dad was. I
forgot
forgot
who
who Howard, but I forgot who Howard.
Howard wasn't even the one who had that reaction. That was
You
my
did.
reaction.
Yes. I forgot.
Who I am.
Well, actually, I was focused on it being Howard, not you.
Right. But he also
So-
would not have been okay with it.
Right. Right.
Which
but
is why I had the reaction I had.
but I forgot about. I did not include you. It's not that I forgot about you. I forgot about you.
Right, not forgot who you were, just forgot that you existed.
Right.
That you would be part of this.
Right. But Howard also, I had the reaction I had because I know, I'm like, there's no way that Howard, his first day here, this is what he's going to want to do.
Right. Right.
Especially
And my
being told
sense
that this
is
is
that
what
Howard always enjoys going out with Dad.
Right.
And Howard can be so personable,
Yes.
really, and so social, and is great in those situations.
I think part of the reason why I had that reaction is because I know that last summer there was one incident, and I spoke to Dad about this afterwards, where Dad invited Howard out for lunch, and Howard loves going out to lunch one-on-one. He loves it, and he enjoys the social too, but he really wants time alone with Dad. And so Dad invited him out to lunch, and they went out to lunch, and there were other people there that Dad didn't mention to Howard.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't even know that situation. Yeah.
So that happened during the summer. I don't have to mention who the people were, and they were
Right.
all people Howard likes, but that's not
What he was expecting.
What he was expecting.
Right.
And
But,
it's
like,
not
that
what he
would've-
had wanted. So I'm like, okay, now the exact same thing is happening again, because I told Howard, you're going out to lunch with my dad. And he's like, great. And all of a sudden it's the same situation again where it's like, okay.
All right.
But that would upset me too. That has upset me. Like, one specific incident is coming to mind where I was supposed to be going up. One of my really good friends, her family has a house up in the mountains in Colorado. And she and I had planned this weekend together that we were going to go up to the house for the weekend. And then I found out, like, the day before that she'd invited, like, 4 other friends to come.
Yeah, that's...
And I was like, very upset about it. Ultimately, it ended up being an awesome weekend. And I'm now, like, I hang out with one of the people that I met on that weekend more than I hang out with the original friend. So, like, it had a happy ending. But, and actually, I should say, because both of them will probably listen to this, that I hang out with the second one more because the first one moved away. Not because I like her less.
Well, that's what happened with me and Veronica. I inherited my friend Veronica from my sister. It was the 3 of us. Then my sister moved away, and I have Veronica, and we're much closer than Veronica's with my sister now because she moved away. How dare she, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that happens. But this is back to basic communication.
But
Not
what
giving
I
details.
find, if I could speak about my husband this way, why not? Dad and I will have plans. Let's go out to so and so restaurant. Fine, let's go out and have dinner. And then he'll say, and let's invite so and so and so and so. And it was like, well, I was really looking forward to it just being the 2 of us. But you sure you don't want them to, you know? And then the feeling is, can't we just do this, the 2 of us? You need somebody else to be there. And he enjoys just the 2 of us. But sometimes I'm not sure exactly what it is for him, but he needs that connection to certain people.
I am very similar to Dad in that way, but it's not certain people. It's I want everyone around me all the time when I'm out. Like when I'm home, I want no one around me. But when I'm out, I want everyone around me. So like I'm constantly inviting friends to like join on different plans. And I actually have no idea if the friends that I had the original plan with mind or not. No one's ever said anything. Except for one time when one of my really good friends, when she was still living here, different one that I was talking about before, one of her friends was coming to visit, and I was like, oh, we should go do this, and we should go do this, and kind of like there were like events happening, and she said to me, like, she's like, I appreciate this, but I really just want to spend time alone with him, which does not make sense to me, because when I have people in town, like when my friend Caitlin, who I mentioned in the last episode, like when she comes to visit, I'm like invite everyone, like Caitlin and I are gonna go do this, come hang out with us, like come do this with us, come do like, it's all the exciting things happen when someone from out of town is visiting, so I want everyone to come. Like my friend Sabrina visited last year, and like then my friend Luke was like with us for everything that we did, because like we were going off and doing all this stuff, and like Luke joined for all of them, and I want everyone together. And so my friend Carolyn, I'm just throwing all the names out, I hope people don't mind, she was like I appreciate all that, but I need you to stop. And I had like the first moment where anytime someone sets a boundary, like the initial reaction is always like, oof, okay, that hurt a little. But like very quickly I was able to get to the place of like, oh my god, that's so cool that she felt comfortable enough to set a boundary with me. Like that's such an awesome friendship. And I was like, of course, totally get it. That doesn't compute for me, because that's not how my brain works. I want everyone together all the time. And like I talk about this with like my best friend Vince all the time, where I don't know any of his friends, and he knows every single one of my friends by name, to the point that he has hung out with my friends when I'm not here. Like he's gone to their birthday parties when I've been out of town, and like, but he could tell me stories about his friends, and like, what friend wouldn't know if you said the name anyway, because I have not met any of them. And it's just very different, and it's different ways of functioning.
When I was much younger, before I was married, when I had friend groups, I wanted them to mix. I wanted to be the hub, the center, and have my friends come together and be around me. They hated each other. There was no way that they could meld. It was not going to happen.
Yeah, and, so it's interesting because like I do that. I have parties. I bring friends from all different things, and they all meld, which I feel like says something really cool about me, that I only collect good people.
Oh, good for you. Well, it ended up that those two groups I no longer have any contact with at all.
Yeah.
They weren't such great people. Okay. So,
Mara, what's your take on it?
The complete opposite of both of you. I have no need to gather everybody around me. I'd much rather do everything individually, and I cannot imagine going out with somebody, inviting somebody else along, and not making sure with that other person first if that was okay. That would be very uncomfortable for me to just bring somebody.
No, I would think you need to make sure the other people, your first people, are okay with.
Right, like when
just because I would be,
and I would do that before I invited the other people. It would be like, we're thinking to ask so and so to join us. Are you okay with that? And if they're okay, then we would extend the invitation, and they can come or not come, but we would not invite the people without first clearing it with the first people.
I am more impulsive, and I will invite people. Well, hold on. Let me. I will invite people to like join on something, and then be like, well, actually, let me check and make sure it's okay, and I'll report back, and then I'll check, and then it's all. I can't think of a time when it hasn't been okay.
Yeah, but it's very different. You throw parties, and a party is different.
But I'm not talking about parties. I'm talking about just like a one-on-one outing where I invite someone else to join. Or like next weekend, one of my friends is having an art show, and I'm going to dinner with a couple friends beforehand, but like I keep inviting other people to join for dinner. But because we're all going to the art show together after, and I know that the couple that I'm going to dinner with, that like we have that dinner planned, they will not care that other people are there. I know that about them, because like we've had the reverse where like I've gone to them and then they've brought other people, which is actually, this is such an interesting little web. So the only people whose names I haven't dropped so far was the first friends I talked about with the weekend up in the mountains. It was Elise had her family up in the mountains, and I met Oakley that weekend, and I hang out with Oakley now, and I love Oakley. But I was invited to a baseball game with this couple that I'm going to dinner with next weekend, and they never said that anyone else was going to be at the baseball game. I thought it was just going to be the three of us, and then like I arrive, and they're like, yeah, Oakley's going to be here soon, and I'm like, wait, my Oakley? Like, how do you know this person? And it turns out they met at one of my parties.
Oh, that's cool.
Okay, it has been, as usual, a pleasure to speak with my two girls
Thank you for inviting me
and
to join.
hanging out a little. And I keep Mara and bye Sarah.
Okay. Well, we're not going to record again for a little over a month because we're waiting until the first episode airs before we record episode 4. So it's been real, and I'll catch you in a month. As if we
Are
don't
you
talk
able
regularly anyway.
Right. Okay, sweetheart. We'll talk more later.
Love you.
Have a great day.
Love you too.
Take care of your puppies. Take care of your puppies.
Yes,
Love you.
I will. Bye.
Bye, sweetheart.
I'm Sarah,
I'm Shane.
and this has been Listen to My Mother.
If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a positive review and subscribing to us on your favorite platform.
And if you'd like the chance to listen to my mother, head to the link in our show notes, which is currently bit.ly/listen to my submission. That's bit.ly/listen to my submission and submit your question.
No question is off limits.
And don't forget to follow our journey on Instagram at listen to my mother or at whatsthepoint.therapy.
Thanks for listening. Talk to you soon.
Bye, Mama.
Bye, baby.